Welcome to Some Things Considered, the podcast where we are obsessed with story. We celebrate creativity and we talk to cool people to find out what makes them tick. I'm your host, Sean Murphy. I'm an author. I direct the Center for Story at Shenandoah University, and I run the nonprofit 1455 Lit Arts. For more about me and what I do, check out seanmurphy.net. Hey, everybody, welcome back to Some Things Considered. This is the podcast where we celebrate creativity and we're obsessed with story and storytellers. I'm Sean Murphy, your host. I direct the nonprofit 1455. I direct the Center for Story at Shenandoah University. So I'm a creative guy and I love story and I love talking to interesting and creative people. Today is not only no exception. I've been looking forward to this and I'll explain why for quite some time. So I'm really happy and joyous to have Chris Colin here. Let me introduce him properly. Chris's work has appeared in The Atlantic, New York Times Magazine, and Best American Science and Nature Writing, among many others. He's written about billionaires, rivers, rent-a-friends, endangered noodles, solitary confinement, and a lot more, some of which we're going to talk about today. He's also written several books, including What to Talk About and Off the Day the Internet Died, a bedtime fantasy. He lives in San Francisco. Chris, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Sean. So nice to be here.
Well, let's get right down to brass tacks because we got a lot of ground to cover. But you've written two very recent pieces, both of which rocked me in multiple ways. And so I first want to acknowledge, thank you for being here because I reached out to you after reading one of these pieces and basically demanded and begged that we could chat, and you were gracious enough to accept my invitation. I was telling you before we came on the air, it's always a treat. I mean, I think we're all used to talking about the information overload and the content overload. Those of us that read and write, there's never been more stuff to get through. So when you find a writer that really does it for you, that's its own blessing, and one should always express, tremendous gratitude. But when you read deeper and realize they've written all kinds of stuff, there's something pretty special about that. So this is equal parts an opportunity to chat, but also kind of thank you for going a little bit deeper. And the topics you cover seem to me, very connected, heart and mind, as far as what should we be talking about to make us more aware and more kind. So if that's not a ringing enough endorsement for everyone, you've got to check Chris out. But the big reason, right, is your piece from New York Times um, with the sufficiently provocative title, "You're Going to Lose Your Mind: My 3-Day Retreat in Total Darkness." I mean, right? So let's start with the basics. How did this come about?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for all those nice words. If my mom paid you to say that stuff, that's fine with me. I support it. Thank you. Yeah. This idea was it was something that I had sort of been kicking around the back of my brain for a few years. I had known about this interesting guy. His name is Justin, and he had been a staff chaplain in the Department of Corrections in New York City, which is an interesting job on its own. He had been the first all-staff chaplain, so he was basically looking out for the spiritual and emotional well-being of around 10,000 employees, largely at Rikers Island, the big jail there, and other similar facilities around the city. He had just been a regular guy before that. I had known about him, and he was a Buddhist. He was a Buddhist priest, and suddenly he finds himself in this very intense and wild world, with an incredibly demanding job that by the way got more demanding during the pandemic, when life in Rikers Island just went nuts. So that's all a long way of saying I already knew about this guy, and then when I heard about what he was doing next after his time at Rikers and why he had left Rikers, that's when my ears really pricked up. So sorry, long preamble over,
Oh,
and now
perfect.
now we get to the darkness part. So. like I said, this guy had been a Buddhist priest,
Yeah.
and in his time sort of researching the history of Buddhism, he had come across this ritual that used to be practiced much more often than it is now. It's called a dark retreat. And um, basically, it goes back over 1,000 years. Practitioners would go into total darkness, usually a cave, and spend ideally 49 days in there all alone. I don't mean it was dim, Sean. I mean pitch black
Yeah.
by themselves. Somehow, they would arrange for food to be delivered, food and water. Um, and and they would often have, I mean, almost always they would have visions. They were said to experience what the bardo was like, but the bardo being the time between death and reincarnation in Buddhism. So this guy Justin decides what we need in our broken, warped world of 2025 is a little more time in darkness. And that's what he began doing after he left the jails of New York City.
Yeah.
And I just thought that sounded fascinating and terrifying and a little compelling, mostly terrifying to me. And to me, that was a signal that I needed to sort of look into it more.
So I think it's helpful for anyone watching because I can imagine. I'm thinking about my wife and pretty much everyone else I know, but starting with my wife, would say full stop. That's insane under no circumstances for any amount of money. I came to your article from maybe along the continuum, definitely not where my wife is, definitely not someone that's ready or would be willing to do that. But for me, spiritual dude, have read about this type of stuff, totally respect the kind of tradition, this notion that something like that, however intimidating, has been passed down for centuries. There's something to that I think any sensitive person has to at least respect, if not try to engage with. But more kind of relevant and recent, although I had some psychedelic psilocybin adventures in college, the world of visions and out of body experiences was not foreign to me, but not a frequent flyer. But about 10 years ago, I had the opportunity for the first time to go in an isolation tank in Boulder,
Hmm.
Colorado. And I will confess that I was not only looking forward to it, I was actually kind of cocky. I'm like, I I meditate, I listen to music in the dark, like I'm going to enjoy this. And what humbled me was it started great. I got in, wasn't nervous, wasn't claustrophobic. It was when I opened my eyes and it was
Hmm.
darkness, I had an immediate anxiety attack and I had to work through, which I imagine for some people is the whole point, but I had to work through like you can get out anytime, but the long-winded way of saying I thought I was pretty ready. And the minute I opened my eyes in complete darkness, even though I knew literally consciously I was sober, I can open the thing. It was horrifying. So of course, I ended up having a pretty interesting experience and have done it several times since, all being positive. I bring all that up maybe to orient watchers that I don't want to just think, well, that's crazy. I'd never do it. I'm saying, having gone through something like a training wheel baby version, reading your piece, I was just in complete like I don't think on any level I could conceivably do that. So I'm just in
How long were you in there?
you and anyone for in the tank
Yeah.
like 90 minutes.
Okay.
So I mean, not even in the same universe as what we're talking about, but in terms of saying as someone that is amenable, at least conceptually, to some kind of experience like that, a tiny version of that the first time I tried it terrified me. So I think about what would it be like to be in the dark for a day, much less 3 days, much less 49 days. So going from that to where you were, what was your mindset? Obviously, as a writer and clearly a sensitive, curious dude, the fact that it pricked your ears up speaks volumes. But how does one get from that's pretty cool to might need to do that myself?
I didn't have your cockiness. I wish I had it. I was purely scared. I thought I'm going to lose my mind. I'm going to get sort of claustrophobically panicked in there. claustrophobic not from the space, but from just the darkness pressing in all around me. Um, I had like 9 million ways that I thought this was going to go sideways, and to me that was a signal that there was something interesting here that I should probably at least consider forcing myself to do, or at least explore why it was hard, or it seemed like it would be hard. I think those are signals that there's something interesting afoot, um, either in the experience or in my own quote unquote brain. So yeah, that's how it was because I was afraid that I started to get more curious. I thought I need to look into this.
See, what I love about what you just said is I think what we're talking about here is a different type of well, now we're talking about personalities, baggage versus spiritual yearning. Like I just feel like again, thinking of my network of friends, I couldn't think of a single person I know that would be up for this. And I've got, as you can imagine, right, friends that verge from my wife, I would say I was on one pole. I'm probably not even halfway to Buddhism, but friends of mine that are much more adventurous have had much more experience with out of body. I can't think of anyone that wouldn't be terrified and
Yeah,
either not be willing to put themselves in that kind of uber vulnerable position, but also once you get in there, how quickly would things fall apart? So I don't want to let anyone off the hook. I'm gonna, everyone has to read this piece, so we won't give everything away. But spoiler alert, guy goes into darkness, guy comes back into the light. Maybe we can dance around some of the things you learned or what kind of reaction did your family have? Did your friends have? Do you have friends that now are intrigued and want to try it, or does everyone think you're nuts or all of the above?
yeah, kind of all of the above.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say one more thing, which is that
Yeah.
you mentioned psychedelics. I had done some reporting. I did a story for Wired a couple of years ago about the sort of evolving thinking about what we used to call bad trips. I was interested to learn that we're discouraged from using that phrase now
Okay.
because the thinking is um, if you have a really difficult, scary, frightening experience on mushrooms, on acid, on whatever,
Yeah.
um, that's valuable. That's worthwhile. It might be horrifying, and I have been there myself, but that's not bad. And I just thought that was an interesting idea. And it was part of a longer story about how we respond to that kind of psychic distress as a culture. But the fact that that idea that we could rethink the value of these really scary experiences, um, that was part of what convinced me to suck it up and do this thing.
And we talk about like it makes me think of everything from like the walkabout to
Mm,
going into a cave. These are traditions that are definitely designed to teach to have some kind of epiphany or experience where by design the person's never the same or by being
yeah,
inside someone's mind. The reason I mean I think a story like this would have resonated 30 years ago, 50 years ago, 50 years from now. But I think it's particularly poignant right now because we're in this, right, this era that none of us or very few of us can even try to escape from, which is we're plugged in, we're connected.
yeah.
There's way less white space, much less black space. So talk about from the frying pan into the fire in terms of like, I'm going to go from never not being bombarded to right inside someone's my own brain. And I do think, again, thinking of my own self and people I know, the notion and what I experienced in the isolation tank where it became clear to me, because I have to confess in my naivete and genuine ignorance, I'd seen altered states, love it. I understood and respected that something was happening, but I just remember thinking, without the drugs, like, well, how can something transformative happen? But what I
Mhm.
experienced very quickly was when it's all dark and you can't hear anything, you are inside yourself. And that you can't explain it. I mean, you can explain it, right? But you have to experience that to understand the enormity of that silence and whether you have demons, visions, etc., they're going to come party right away because your mind and your subconscious is always making noise even when it is quiet. So I don't know. I don't know if there's a question
Yeah.
so much as what really hit me about your piece was in contrast to the world we're all living in, I would imagine a lot of people might say, I need some of that. But it's like that might be too much of a good thing for most Americans in 2020.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I think we are more bombarded than ever by obviously by noise and by sheer photons. We're just never in the literal or sort of metaphoric dark these days. And it's increasingly rare that we hear our own thoughts, at least for more than a half second, because there's always something competing for our attention, something on our phone or, just out in the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was sort of part of my curiosity. It was like, oh my God, I don't even know who I would find in there if I finally blocked out all the noise and distraction and just listened to my own brain. And I think I suspect we all are afraid of what our own brains would would say to us or do to us if left, kind of unchecked. Um,
Yeah.
it could be a, fascinating and peaceful experience for some. It could be terrifying.
And what I've read over the years, and it totally makes sense to me. And I want to attribute. I want to say, if I'm remembering, it was a biography of Sid Barrett that I read years ago. But the guy that was describing it stayed with me, which was certain people with the people that don't have imaginations or aren't sensitive love psychedelics because it gives them the illusion that they have an imagination. People that already have imaginations can have a tricky time. People that are super creative and sensitive can have an extraordinarily scary time. And
Hmm.
it's always stayed with me. Like the more, not necessarily noisy, but the more thinking and feeling is going on, of course, those things are going to be amplified. So I read something like your piece and think to myself, a properly administered psychedelic experience would probably do a lot of people a lot of good with many caveats, but I don't know like who I would recommend even a baby version of what you did. So I guess the big question is, looking back on it, is it something that you would contemplate doing again? Are you mostly grateful and relieved? Is there any regret?
Good questions. Well, before we get there, let me set the scene. I feel like I've been blathering about the sort of theoretical
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
basis for this adventure. I should actually explain what I actually did.
Oh, please.
So I live in San Francisco. I said goodbye to my wife and kids. I made all kinds of arrangements to make sure that if anything, if they needed me in any way, there would be a way for them to contact this guy Justin who's running the retreat. He would find a way to get the message to me in my darkness. I didn't want to flip out about, wondering whether something bad was happening, back in the real
Sure.
world.
Yep.
So after that was all set up, um, yeah, hopped on a plane, went to Connecticut. He picks me up in his pickup truck and we drive up into the woods. And there, deep in the woods is this cabin, a log cabin. And in the basement of the log cabin is a kind of refinished bedroom. It looked in the with the lights on, it just looked like a kind of um, like an Airbnb bedroom plus a horror film like Saw 4 kind of space because all the windows are blacked out and every single bit of potential light is taped over. So it's like it looks familiar and it also looks a little scary.
Sure.
And so, at the appointed hour, and we'd been talking for weeks and sort of preparing for this. Justin led me there, and I had some gaffer tape in my hand, and he said one sentence. The last thing he said was, "It's all in your head," and then he closed the door. I took my tape and I sealed these last remaining, edges of the door, and then flipped the light switch, and then Sean, it's a level of darkness that I don't. It seemed like I had never seen this before. We can all imagine like being in a really dark room, and after a while, your eyes kind of adjust. You can wave your arm in front of your face, and you can kind of make it out.
Yeah.
I 3.5 days into this, that never happened. I could never see anything. It was pitch black, and very quickly it became clear that the eyes open, eyes closed, it was exactly the same, which is a doozy for your mind to get around.
Yes.
And suddenly I had this expanse of time to fill. And that's another thing that we never have these days. We never have nothing to do. I mean, there was literally nothing I could do.
Right.
It's a bed. It's a small room. There's a desk with some nuts and some cherries on it. There's a built-in contraption on the wall, like a metal, it's called a pass box. And Justin 3 times a day could open it from the other side, put in some food, close it, and then I would open my end. So no light ever gets in.
Yeah.
And and that's it. And then, oh, and a bathroom,
I was gonna say, yeah. Yep.
uh and I had tried to sort of make a mental snapshot of where everything was. Okay, there's tea over here, there's a hot water thing over here. The tea on the left is the herbal tea. Don't drink the tea on the right. That's going to keep me up. That's the that's the caffeinated stuff. And I'm just
Yeah.
trying to like remember where everything is and of course I managed to retain about half of that and I'm just bonking into walls half the time and
Yeah.
um so yeah, just what began to unfold was a weird mix of pure logistics, like learning how to operate in the dark, and then quickly some very interesting, um, for lack of a better word, mystical stuff starts happening. You start having very strange, I don't know if they're thoughts, you have strange images. It's not clear that they're in your head. They seem to be operating or playing out. In the space and the space it's hard to tell how much space there is around you. I know intellectually of course that the wall is 6 feet away, but it also felt like I was in a cave. It also felt like I was in a black hole. um, and soon these images start to get more and more vivid, almost like waking dreams. And that was just
Mhm.
day one. It proceeded to get weirder over the next few days.
So were there moments where you were ready to wave the flag, or did it never get sufficiently intense?
Yeah. Well, so one of the reasons that they stopped doing this as much as they used to in centuries past is that people would snap. They would have a psychic break.
Yeah.
And in the old days, when they would go into caves to do this, they would roll boulders up to the edge of the cave to keep people in there. Did not roll up any boulders to the door. And I thought, okay, how bad could it get? If I truly
Right.
freak out, I can leave. Um, what I hadn't counted on is that you can sort of freak out slowly by degrees, and you might not realize that you're going nuts. So
Right.
it's sort of like I had that epiphany a couple days in. I was like, oh, you got to be sort of aware of whether you're actually doing okay in here. Um, I should have said from the top, I'm normally a very normal, healthy, sane, relatively sane person. So, um, but yeah, it was very consuming. The just the experience of being in there. It was like being bombarded by nothingness.
Right. And then you talk about, and again, this was so vividly evoked when you came out, talk about sensory overload on so many spiritual, physical, mental levels.
Yeah, I had by the time I left, you're summoned to exit by the ringing of a bell, and it was before dawn. I mean, you lose track of
Sure.
what time it is. I didn't know if it was day or night, but I pieced together later that it was before dawn. I hear the bell. I sit up in bed, and I look and see that there's a forest all around me. It's just my latest hallucination. Um, I mean, I just saw all kinds of bizarre stuff, but this morning it was a forest and there's all these branches whipping around at me. And I'm kind of like lunging to get to not get hit by these imaginary branches. Um, and I managed to slam my head into an end table. So my head is kind of spinning, my ears are ringing. I grope my way to the door and I open it and it wasn't dawn yet, so luckily it was not bright. But even in the sort of pre-dusk gloom of this cabin,
Yeah.
it was so much. It was like the world and reality are just overflowing with everything, with information and just you know it. it sounds obvious, and it is obvious, but life is a lot, and going into darkness, you get a real you get to reset your baseline a little bit. So yeah,
Right.
over the next day, I started to sort of acclimate to just how overwhelming, our normal reality is.
Yeah, yeah. Well, again, folks, you have to read the piece. If you're not in by now, I don't know what I can tell you, but I'll still encourage you. You got to read the piece. But is there a key takeaway, a big takeaway, especially in the weeks and months afterward?
I'll tell you one thing. I saw Seth Meyers at one point slicing blue cheese in a galley kitchen.
As
I-
one does.
as one does. Uh, in addition to, like, actually more sort of substantive things about my, the life of my children, and I saw my own death. But it was such a mix of profound, heavy stuff and then just bizarre, um, silly things at times. What's the takeaway? I don't know, man. I think we're gonna have to check back in 10 years. I think I'm still piecing it together.
Fair
Um,
enough.
yeah, it was as jarring as the whole experience was. I'm still trying to figure out where it spat me out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's safe to say you gave a gift to yourself by going through this experience and your writing made it a gift. Again, I can't say I'm definitely your ideal reader in the sense that like I'm in, but I mean it just you talking about it is making me have all kinds of feelings. And I think it's because we're talking about the real stuff, right? The real existential stuff you can't distract or hide from. I'm curious what kind of reader response you got. Good, bad, ugly, everywhere in between. Hopefully, mostly positive and grateful.
Oh yeah, everyone was very sweet about it. I think tons of people said, "Oh hell no, I never want to do that."
Right.
But I'm glad better you than me. I'm glad to have read about it. I think
Yeah.
we do have a curiosity
Yeah.
about literal darkness and a curiosity about what happens when we step away from this oversaturated reality that we live in. No, it was really nice to see in the pages of the New York Times, or in the comments section of the New York Times, which is usually filled with, god awful, you know,
Vitriol. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it was nice to see that the folks who read the Times every day are actually also curious about at this level of thing too.
Good. I'm not surprised, but I'm glad to hear that. I also feel like without diminishing, this is a piece of long form journalism that's a complete home run, but perhaps there's a longer term, longer project in there that you can revisit because I think like I said at the outset, there's a lot of meat on that bone. All of it good. I think all of it. It's not going to get less relevant as things get crazier, which
That's true.
is a little bit of a ham-fisted segue. But I don't think I need to force like. So what could be more dissonant with being in complete darkness? Well, there's nothing you can compare that to. But the other two pieces that I've read recently by you that really did rock me because they're places that I already live, and I think a lot of us are already. Well, we'll get into why everyone's going to know what we're talking about, but I think it's in sharp relief too the escape into peace and quiet is not only the exact opposite of the kind of info content overload, but this notion of, well, I'll just say the title of the first one I want to talk about is from the Atlantic. Again, that dropped call with customer service, it was on purpose. And this piece of reportage starts out as so many excellent stories do with a personal experience.
Yeah, that was a apparently my beat is either total darkness or hold times. Yeah, no, I had an ordeal about a year and a half ago where I'm driving my car down the road and it suddenly dies on me in a pretty theatrical way. It looked like I was gonna have a horrible accident. It just shut off in the middle of the road. Couldn't turn the steering wheel, couldn't use the brakes. I was going about 40. I didn't have an accident. I lived to tell the tale. But I just assumed, okay, well, if they can't fix it, it was a newish car. It was covered by warranty. Worst case scenario, I'll get them to either fix or replace it. And what unfolded was a week, and then 2 weeks, and then 3 weeks, and then months. And then ultimately, many months of me doing what we all do more and more all the time, which is just try and get these little things done. Argue with, in my case, a car company and insurance companies, but it's often healthcare, it's often
Yeah.
your utilities or your internet provider, or your phone company, or the DMV. Our worlds have become so um, consumed by these niggling little administrative tasks that
Yeah.
that these always existed at some level, but these days it's just so much. And I was going crazy just on the phone with these people, and always getting transferred. Oh, can you restate your social security number? Oh, we need to transfer you to so and so. Oh, hold time's longer than expected. All this stuff we know this world. And I realized that we all are suffering some version of this constantly.
Yeah.
I bet everyone watching this or listening to this right now
Yeah.
has some little battle that they're in the midst of. And what happens, this is the part that really made me want to write about this. Are we allowed to curse on this show?
When it's encouraged.
What happens is we always just say, ah, fuck it. I'll pay. I can't argue with this insurance company anymore. I can't argue with this airline anymore. I can't argue about this refund I'm entitled. Oh, fuck it. I'll write the $30 check. I'll pay the $100 fee. I
Yeah.
just, I need my time back, my sanity. And I started talking to people more and more, and I realized we all live in a state of fuck it.
Yeah.
And because we're depleted by all these little obligations. And so that's when I got interested, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna report this out as a story.
Well, and so, again, I think we've got everyone in the Seinfeldian sense of like, what's the deal with call times? But what you and what I think a lot of us have either suspected or have discovered, depending on our level of cynicism or awareness or experience or all, is that this increased amount of red tape, the increased wait times, the inability to talk to a human being, and anyone that wonders, is it just me? It's not just you, and more infuriating, this is all very intentional. And
Yeah,
that was the crux of your piece, aside from the human interest, which again is who's not going to relate to that. But the you did some deep dive research and talked to people that confirmed like, oh, this is absolutely intentional and it's good business, which is
yeah,
disgusting.
yeah, absolutely. I found this guy who used to work at a call center. His name is Amos Tanuma. He was a wonderful guy who just started out answering calls when he was younger, and he worked his way up, and then he was managing call centers, and then he was starting them,
Yeah.
running entire operations, and he became my deep throat about this world. And I would just call him after my latest bit of insanity with Ford Motor Company or the insurance company or whatever. And I'd say, God damn, once again, I wait on hold for an hour and I'm just about to talk to someone and then click, it gets disconnected. Amos, is this happening on purpose? I kind of feel like it's happening on purpose. And he just laughed and he said, of course it's happening on purpose. And then
Yeah.
he broke it all down to me. And then pretty soon he was telling me about how these call centers work, and I was talking to other call center workers who were willing to go on the record. Uh, and it turns out there's a whole world to
Yeah.
this suspicion that it's happening deliberately. There are reasons for it. There are structural reasons for it. There are
Yeah.
corporate trends that are responsible for it. And it was so fascinating to me. It
Yeah.
was absolutely eye-opening how what's actually happening. And we all have these vague suspicions, and it turns
Right.
out there's even more to it than we thought.
Yeah, and what one of the takeaways I've had is because I've battled rhetorically for decades now with some of my more libertarian leaning friends, and I have one friend in particular who I love dearly, but his mantra for decades since we were in college was at the end of the day, Sean, there's no company that's going to willingly do something to piss off their customers because that's bad business. And I used to sound so cynical and I don't know what other words you could use, but I would explain to him unless it's good, unless there's profit, And what we're seeing here, at scale is that companies have made the very deliberate decision like, oh, we're going to have some pissed off customers. We might even lose some customers, but the money that we're making by the one example that I think most Americans have either experienced or read about this, but you reference it in the piece. The insurance companies are like, oh, we don't even file with the doctors because we figure if the people are tenacious enough to follow through, we'll deal with it. The breathtaking level of cynicism and audacity, but you also, as a writer myself, I kind of have to tip my hat and go, wow, like that if you've got the balls, that's your operating, business acumen, I'll bet it works, and it apparently works like a charm.
To be fair, I don't think anyone sets out and says, let's screw some customers today. I think every business
Right.
person believes that they want to be good at customer service, just like, all of their signs and mottos say. I think they really set out to do that, at least for a minute. And then they see how much it costs to keep
Right.
customers happy. And they also
Right.
realize that they are operating in a new paradigm right now, which is that um, uh, CEO tenure has gotten so much shorter in recent years. So
Yep.
you have these folks who are the heads of companies just for a couple of years. And
Yep.
rather than working on behalf of their customers, they're working to please their boards. They're trying to get their shareholders happy. And the way to do that is growth. And it's a
Yep.
really interesting equation that's happening behind the scenes where they are calculating that it makes more money to focus on getting new customers than it
Yes.
does to keep the existing ones happy. And we all
Right.
can see that in our lives. It's very easy to sign up for a new service. You don't ever have to wait on hold to subscribe to Netflix.
That's right.
But when you have a problem, that's where they don't put all the resources into it.
Yeah, and your point is well taken about whatever the intentions, whether it's the literal call center employee or even the CEO of a company, but it makes me think, right away, everything from, every CEO being beholden to shareholders and investors to a show like The Wire, where each new mayor, each new police commissioner is like, we're going to get the crime numbers down, and then they realize the system is we're going to get fired if the numbers don't. So to a certain extent, it's not even sufficient, I think, to blame individual companies, although we can and should expose, mendacity. But my point, which is I don't think is cynical, but it's arguably even deeper in its despair, is this is late stage capitalism. I mean, to me, it's
Mhm.
very easy to connect the dots from police work to bureaucrats and CEO boardrooms to academia. I mean, look at how tuition's gone up, and university presidents are already looking for their next gig. CEOs are already looking for their next gig so they can parachute out of there. That also removes some of the accountability because if you're not even going to be there in 3 years, you've made your money, the investors have made their money, and the only people that suffer are the customers. And again, I step back at the end of it and go, it works. It's horrific. It's ruining our country. But there is a method to the madness.
Yep, yep. By the way, I- the fact the fact that they didn't make a season of The Wire dedicated to call centers, you, I'm so sorry that didn't happen. That would have been great.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, no, it's all connected. It's all part of this trend. I think we all feel it at some level. I think when we feel that things are kind of broken and things have gone off the rails, this was just another way that was happening.
yeah. And I think again, I'd love to bounce this off you and see if you talk me off kind of the ledge of cynicism or you this resonates. What I've observed, certainly in the 21st century, is again whether it's a political party, a company, that's selling products, entertainment industry, et cetera, the grind, and you name this sludge of this intended consequence. The ultimate goal, you definitely don't want your customers unhappy. You don't want people with pitchforks, whether you're a politician or a CEO. What you want ultimately is exhaustion or apathy. And I think with
Yes.
apathy, that's how people don't band together. People do feel isolated. People do feel hopeless, and it leads to people voting. against their best interest because they say, yeah, it's all effed and no one
Yeah.
cares and no one's going to make a difference. I think that that is a very intended consequence from, the 1%. The powers that be want nothing more than people who figure nothing's going to make any difference.
Yeah, I totally agree. That was the most that's what I was most eager to write about, was that sense of defeat, the fuck it. It's not just fuck it, I'm gonna write this check to this insurance company. It's fuck it, I'm just gonna accept this. I'm exhausted, I'm depleted. And I saw it, I suspect we all see it in our civic engagement right now. I mean, there's so many batshit things happening per hour in this country that,
Right.
20 years ago we would have been astonished to think that we would tolerate. And now what do? We just kind of sigh, click onto the next tab, and we're just like, well, what are you going to do? And I think the fact that we are not in the streets more, and I
Yeah.
and I want to acknowledge that a lot of people are in the streets in an impressive way, and I think that's growing.
Yeah.
But the fact that we have tolerated as much as we've tolerated, to me, was an indication that we are being depleted and enervated in some kind of systemic way, whether it's deliberate or not. It just, if it serves the status quo, it serves the status quo. They don't have, there doesn't have to be a mastermind behind it.
Yeah. Brilliantly articulated. So watch me pivot again into the third piece because this is where, and I think this brings even our conversation together. I've already, I think, amply demonstrated why I really admire you as a thinker and a writer and a person. But we attempt to make lemonade out of some of these lemons. In your piece in the Wall Street Journal, how to turn the bureaucratic grind of life into a party. You had me a bureaucratic grind. Talk a little bit about what one of your strategies, which is again both a response and I think an antidote to this exhaustion and apathy we're talking about.
Thank you for letting me talk about my lemonade recipe here. Yeah, a few years ago, even before I knew that this phenomenon was called sludge, before I understood the sort of mechanics of what's going into this bureaucratic grind, I was feeling it. We were all feeling it, and I felt like we're all staying home more. We're all kind of beaten down. We're busier with this new category of task. It's, all these sort of phone calls and forums and web portals and remembering your passwords, all these silly little things that on their own are dumb and small. They were they were adding up, and the accretion of these wasn't just keeping us busy, it was isolating us. And so a few years ago, I sent out an email to some friends and neighbors, and I said, next Tuesday, I want you to come over, bring a six pack, bring your laptop, bring your bag of bills, bring your forms that you haven't gotten around to filling out, whatever has been looming. And I called it admin night. And we would do life admin, which is this, in my mind, a new category of busyness. It wasn't work, it wasn't not work, it was this other thing. And it has now, we've been doing it for 6 years now. We do it every month, every 2 months, sometimes more, sometimes less.
Mhm.
And it is awesome, Sean. I really want everyone else to start one because one, it's a nice life hack. It does get you to do all these things that you've been putting off. It's just more fun when you have friends next to you. Um, but it does more than that, in my experience. So let me pause and just explain how it works. So folks come
Yeah.
over on a Tuesday night or a Thursday night, whatever, midweek. It's low fuss. You don't have to cook a big meal. It's like grab some chips and hummus and a bottle of wine or whatever. They show up at 6:30, and it's a combination of getting shit done and a party. And so you shoot the breeze for a few minutes, catch up, and then we all sit around the table or station ourselves in various parts around the house, and we just work quietly for about half an hour, and everyone just plugs away on their own little things that they've been avoiding doing or that are just annoying to do. And
Yeah.
then little timer goes off, and then we hang out for a little while, and it's like a little party, and then it's like, okay, go back to work after a few minutes, and we just,
Yeah.
home by 10, it's not a big deal, but it
Yep.
is it's weirdly fun. I know it sounds like it wouldn't be fun, but it is weirdly fun and satisfying. But
Yep.
in addition to being productive, I think it's kind of I think it's activating. I think it wakes us up to how much we have been isolating ourselves and how much these tasks do sort of like keep us, hunched over our own laptops, or piles of mail or whatever, on our own.
Yeah.
And it just kind of wakes us up. And it doesn't change things at a systemic level. It's certainly not solving things, but it's step one, I think, which is all of us seeing together, sort of switching on a light, like, oh my God, we are all beset by this stuff.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I in my fantasy, there's an admin night on every block, once a month or however much you want to do it. And
Yeah.
folks start to get activated and woken up
Sure.
as consumers and citizens.
Yeah, and I think that there's a beautiful yin yang there where most people, especially friends, want to either be helped or be helpful, ideally both. So you've got the one or two people in the group that are really good or like spreadsheets. You've got the person that does know how to fix plumbing. Like it's the genius of the crowd, in a very non-cynical way. And what I love, so first of all, fully endorse and agree and think this is a wonderful idea that should catch on. I think it's an absolute antidote to exactly what we were describing, which is systemic or intended or not, this isolation, this sense of this constant pressure that can be alleviated, if not really augmented, or augmented, no, that's not the right word, ameliorated or assisted. But what we're really talking about, and this is what I live for, is the idea of we tell stories, we talk about these things because we're looking for connection and it builds community. And I always acknowledge that those two C words can be buzzwords, they can sound like cliches, but like we're talking about the real essence of community, which is not feeling alone, using other people's strengths to help, more broadly. And I do think those things grow into, larger brush fires that can start meaningful change.
Yeah, I think so too. And I do hope that happens. I do think that if we want change, it's got to be fun. Can't be a pain in the ass all the time. And this is a fun way of doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious, like, so it's clearly working for you. Have you been able to turn other neighborhood or friend groups onto this? Is it I,
Yeah, so that piece came out in the Wall Street Journal, I don't know, a week ago. And last time I took a peek, it had been shared, I don't know, 8,000 times or something. And I've been hearing from people all over, including people who are of entirely different political persuasions, which I love.
yeah.
This is a bipartisan pain in the butt. And yeah, I'm hearing about a lot of people saying, I'm starting this very thing. This is what I need.
Yeah.
I wish I saw friends or neighbors more, but if we do a big dinner party, then that's a hassle, and then we've fallen behind on all the stuff we got to do. But this way, you get kind of the best of both worlds. So yeah, I've been hearing from a lot of folks.
That's great, and I think that there's a real hunger for this right now because again, it's been beaten to death in the media with good reason. But as we're more connected and online, a lot of people have never felt more alone. So these are kind of actual steps to understand, like an older school community in an analog world, something like you've started would have at least been conceivable. Where now it seems almost a little bit revolutionary, which full tip of the chapeau to you there. Um, Chris, talking to you, I think, and I don't need to force a through line. I think we've made it clear that you're a very intelligent, articulate writer. But the two things that I think really make your work impactful is you demonstrate curiosity and empathy. And I think that is what's underpinning all the pieces we've talked about today. You're curious about how things work, why they don't work, um, and being able to understand how these things are not. We don't live in our own little bubbles. These are all things that all humans of virtually all economic strata are dealing with. Um, Issues like dealing with existential angst. We're all going to grapple with that. Is that a fair assessment, or how else would you describe kind of like if you were to say, what is the my sensibility as a writer and what keeps me engaged?
Thank you for saying that. I've been wondering that for the last 20 years. What's my beat? Who am I?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. I think that am someone who is curious about on a good day, fretful about on a bad day, the state of being a human being in this weird world, and the world seems to be getting weirder every year. So there's lots to lots to ponder and write about
Sure.
on lots of different levels. So yeah, I mean that couldn't be broader. Um, but um, but yeah, I think that being curious and hopefully empathetic is at least a starting point for where I what I do.
Yeah.
Except for times when it's not. But
Well, sure, and
yeah.
and I think I asked that both, out of genuine curiosity of my own, but I think inevitably, I don't think you can have a conversation today without at least mentioning AI. But some of the things I'm hearing about the danger of technology and AI is it's going to prevent art, it's going to take the place of expression, and my feeling, kind of equal parts optimism and recalcitrance, is I don't think that's the case. I think AI is something we need to be very cognizant, very wary, maybe even afraid of. But as it relates to art and creativity and the impulse to research and tell stories and connect, I think that's a very human thing. And I think if anything, AI is going to put in sharp relief how much our current world is lacking those very things. So my hope is that actually there's a bit of a backlash that leads to more deeply reported
Hmm.
stories and a desire to connect without being hopefully without being naive about. I'm talking the very real implications on our culture, our workforce are significant, but as just it relates to story and the written word and shared expression, I think you are a writer that epitomizes like this is why we want to read these stories and we wouldn't want algorithm to serve it up for us. And I also kind of think in mind like students and younger writers who are like, how do I start to write my own stories in a world that AI is doing it? I think we
Hmm.
both could and would say, no, you can and should pick up pen and paper or your laptop and have that curiosity and go out and find a story to talk about.
I hope you're right. I will tell you that reminds me of something that a friend of mine said. She's a food writer. Her name's Sarah, and she said we were kind of whimpering about the future of writing and AI and all that stuff. And she said that to her, AI is kind of like a peach, and really good writing is like a really good peach. And if you've had a good peach, you know the difference between a just fine, an adequate peach and a good one. If you
Yeah.
haven't, you're fine with the adequate peach. And it's kind of the same with AI writing. It's really quite good, of course, as everyone has observed,
Yeah.
but it's not amazing and it doesn't scratch those hidden itches that hopefully writing tries to scratch. But for a lot of people, it will be enough. So yeah, I hope you're right that people start to miss the really good peaches.
Well, Chris, thanks for spending time. Again, if this conversation serves as a delivery device to get people checking this out, to check you out, mission accomplished. But once again, I'll encourage everyone to check out these stories we're talking about. I think for obvious reasons. But if people are looking for you online, how do they find you?
Yeah, chriscolin.com is the easiest way. Colin is my last name. Oh God, if people want to go into the dark and tell me about it, if people want to start admin nights and tell me about it, I am all ears. I want to hear from people about that.
Outstanding. Well, I'm looking forward to doing what all avid readers do, which is looking forward to the next pieces that are coming out and making up for lost time and catching up. We didn't get a chance to even talk about your books, so we'll have to tackle that another time. But presumably, like any writer that does freelancing and writes books, you're probably already at work on a new project or projects.
I'm in the stage of thinking about whether I want to do that or not. Yeah.
Hey, maybe some time in the dark will help.
Oh God, yeah, maybe.
Well, Chris, again, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And like I said, I'm as a fan, I'm grateful that I discovered you, and you've definitely helped me kind of think about some things that can never be thought of often enough. So, full respect, full appreciation. We definitely want to talk to you again soon, but wish you all the best.
So nice of you. Thank you, Sean. It's been really nice chatting.
Right on. All right. Thanks for checking out Some Things Considered. Go to the archive at seanmurphy.live. You can see all the back issues. If you are someone or know someone that would want to talk to me, let me know, and we'd love to feature you. Everyone, stay creative, stay safe, stay sane, and we'll see you soon. Thanks for tuning in to Some Things Considered. Find out more, including how to be a guest, at seanmurphy.net. Reminder, we are obsessed with story and celebrating creativity. Also, we're here to advocate for the arts by any means necessary. Drop us a line, get involved, and support our creatives who are the lifeblood of our culture. I'm Sean Murphy. See you on the next episode of Some Things Considered.